Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online guide video with me, Sherman. Today guys, we're going to be talking about skills and how they work in the game. So this way you guys have a greater understanding of how to pick the skills that you want to use in the situation you might be playing in and to give you greater effect. And when I say greater effect, greater effectiveness to complete the content. I don't mean to be the best player in the game. I mean to give you greater effective control over how your character plays, whether it's in a solo play experience, a group play experience, or PvP. This is to help you to understand how skills work. And so the first thing you have to know about skills is skills come in three basic categories. You have your damage skills, you have your support skills, and you have your control skills. Now, some skills are going to be mixed. So you're going to have damage control, or damage control support, or support control, or control damage, or support damage. It comes in varying ways. And the best thing you can do is learn how to use those skills to your advantage in the type of play you do, whether it's solo play, group play, or in PvP. So, how can you tell what a skill does? Well, I'm going to use the Necromancer as a base to describe how some skills work. I'm going to use the rest of the skills, other skills, to show you what I mean and break it down from there. And it also can help you with the role you play as well. So, let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to start with Frozen Colossus. This is an ultimate for the Gravelord Necromancer skill line. And this skill is actually a dual skill. It does both damage and control. But when you read the skill and you look at it, you're going to think it's a damage dealing skill, when in reality it's a control skill with a damage effect. And the way you tell this is how it applies its effects in conjunction with each other. So we're going to read the skill. It says, unleash a frostbitten flesh colossus to pulverize enemies in the area. The Colossus smashes the ground 3 times over 3 seconds, dealing 3,170 frost damage with each smash. Dealing damage applies major vulnerability to the enemy hit for 12 seconds, increasing their damage taken by 10%. Now, the thing you have to understand about damage control support is how their effects work. Damage does damage. Control does things to control how an enemy, either player or NPC or mob, whatever you want to call it, is effective. So a lot of times you could call it a debuff. And that is a controlling effect. Anything that reduces an enemy's capability to do something controls their effective fighting capabilities. So whether it's their movement speed, the amount of damage they take, the amount of damage they deal, those are all things that are considered controlling effects, as long as it's applied to them. Now, if it's something that supports your group or your whatever by increasing their capabilities of doing damage, healing effectiveness, or whatever it might be, then that plays into support. So you have those 3 types of damage categories. But damage can also be broken down too by what it does. So physical damage doesn't get as much benefit as, say, frost damage. Or magic damage doesn't get as much benefit as frost damage. See, frost damage has a negative effect that it can apply. And that negative effect is called brittle. So brittle can also increase the amount of damage an enemy takes. So you have these 2 negative effects and this 1 damage effect. So those 2 negative effects you're applying to the enemy increases your damage capabilities. So this is a controlling effect with a damage attached. So you look at your skills and break them down that way. Now we're going to move down to Flame Skull, which it says it deals flame damage, but then every 3rd cast of this ability deals 20% increased damage. Well, so because it deals 2,377 flame damage, It also has a chance of applying burning, which can apply a tick of damage to the enemy, also considered flame damage. So they will take extra flame damage on top of the damage they take from this, and that damage will last over time. And because flame damage is, or burning effect is considered a damage over time effect. So you get that. Well, you also get that benefit of the 20% damage increase on the third strike. So the damage actually gets amplified. So you can do the base damage of the 2,377 damage with a chance of applying the burning damage and this boost in damage on the third cast. That is considered a support damage control effect. So it does actually do all three. But it's designed to be a damage skill with those two other effects attached onto it. So the thing you have to know is, like, how do you determine what a skill does? Read it. Read it and think about how it's going to work to your advantage. And not all skills are about damage, like I said. There's some skills, like, say, Grave Grasp. This one, you summon 3 patches of skeletal claws from the ground in front of you. Enemies in the first area are snared by 30% for 5 seconds, immobilized in the second area for 4 seconds, and stunned in the final area for 3 seconds. Each patch applies minor maim to enemies hit for 5 seconds, reducing their damage done by 5%. So why is this skill? Why would you use this skill? Because it's a control skill. Literally, it's designed to control how the enemy works. It reduces their damage that they deal by 5%. It also reduces their movement speed, snares them, or stuns them. So they're basically just messed up. But when you have a group of enemies that you can get together and you hit them with this, that means every single enemy hit in this 18 meter reach area, 5 meter wide section, is going to get this effect. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what it looks like being cast, so you guys can see for yourselves. So when I cast this ability, everything that you just saw there, the first circle is the 30%, the second circle immobilizes, and the last one stuns. So that means enemies further out can't move. The ones right up close can still move, but they're going to move slower. And they're still going to be affected by that minor maim for the duration. So that in itself can help your group in a lot of ways. One, it reduces the incoming damage from the closest enemies. It stops the incoming damage from the furthest enemies. So looking at how skills can affect your play and affect your group dynamic is what it's all about. It's about taking the skills that are going to best benefit your group to beat the content, or to help you beat the content, or help you survive, or to help you do this or that. Because support skills are going to help you have greater survivability most of the time. And getting to this one, this is a self-support skill. So, bone armor. Wrap yourself in a hardened bone, granting you major resolve, increasing physical and spell resist by 5,948 for 20 seconds. Create a corpse when the effect completes. So this is a self-support skill. It's a very selfish skill, but it's a self-support skill because it gives you a way to boost your survivability, and it gives you this corpse which can be used for a lot of different things, whether it's healing, damage, whatever. So it can be a support, or a support damage, or a support this, or a support that. It really depends on how you use that corpse. So you get this greater broad of how your character can be used, looking at the skills and how they affect your play, whether you're solo, group, or PvP. The same thing applies to your passives to some degree. Some passives, like Death Gleaming, whenever an enemy you are in combat with dies within 28 meters of you, restore 200 magic and stamina. That's a supportive passive where Disdain Harm reduces the damage you take from damage over time abilities by 15% while you have a Bone Tyrant ability active. So if you're not using any Bone Tyrant abilities, this thing really doesn't give you any use. But if you use a Bone Tyrant ability, then you're going to give yourself 15% reduced damage from area of effect damage. So this is, or damage over time effect. So this is actually a buff to you. So it's a supportive thing. Pretty much most passives are going to be supportive. So like health, this one. Increase your healing received by 2% for each Bone Tyrant ability slotted. Last gasp, increase your max health by 1250. That means you get this automatically. Like, you don't have to do anything. It's automatically attached to your character as soon as you start putting points into it. So there's a lot of things that passives can do to also benefit the way you play and how you use your skills and abilities, so you can be more effective regardless of the situation. So even if you're not using a Bone Tyrant skill, you can still take this, and then when you do, you have the effect of it. So it's always good to take your passives for anything you use and maximize their use, their capability of use. So that's why I tell people, when you make a character, always focus on getting your passives and your active abilities so you can use them at different times. So going on with skills, support skills come in a lot of different flavors as well. Some support skills can do support, but they can also have negative effects applied to them. And in the way the use of the Necromancer's heal here, Render Flesh, it has support and it has a controlling effect, but it has a controlling effect on you. So it applies a heal to you or your ally in front of you, but then it applies Minor Defile to you, reducing your healing received by 8% for 4 seconds. So it's got a great heal with a negative control effect on you. So that's one of the other things you have to look at. Not every class is going to have the same skills or passives. They might have the same, some that share similar effects and stuff, such as like with Gravelord, the Boneyard, Unnerving Boneyard has Major Breach. Well, it does it in a 6-meter radius. So anything that walks into that 6-meter radius while this spell is active gets Major Breach applied, and any frost damage it takes. And it also gives you a synergy, and it increases damage based on corpses, all kinds of stuff. Read your skills. But it's a very good ability because of what it does. Now, there's another skill down here in the Alliance War assault line called Razor Caltrops. It's one of the morphs for Caltrops, and this one does the breach, but it also does damage and a controlling effect. So this thing will deal the breach to the enemy, which reduces spell and physical resistance, in an 8-meter radius, which is bigger than 6 by 2 meters. So that means you can affect more enemies this way. It doesn't deal the damage that the Nerving Boneyard does, but the Nerving Boneyard is actually smaller in radius, so it gets increased damage capabilities. This one does less damage because it's a less of an area of effect, or a greater area of effect, and then it also reduces any movement speed of enemies by 50%. So if I were to learn this skill, for example, and put it on my bar right there, and I were to combine it with this, any enemy hit in that front area. So if I were to put the Caltrops out here, okay, which for some reason didn't show up, that's really weird. Let's go down here, let's try it on a dummy. Maybe that's not why it's showing up. So if I were to do it like here, okay, Caltrops isn't working. But if I were to do it here and then do this, that enemy becomes immobilized with a 50% movement speed reduction for the duration of the Caltrop. So while Caltrop is ticking, they might get snared by the one ability, but now they're also immobilized when they get out of it for 50% movement speed till Caltrops ends. So this is like a dual effect that helps you control movement speed of enemies. This is really good when you're fighting packs of trash in a dungeon or a trial setting, because it allows you to control the movement of the enemies, and it makes it easier for you to stack them together and then burn them down faster. So that's one of the things you have to look at when it comes to group dynamics, which we'll talk about in another video, but for now we're talking about skills and their effectiveness. So that's just one of the things that you can do with skills. Now, other skills, things like Warhorn, Aggressive Warhorn, these things are support skills, which can definitely increase your group's capability of doing things, but at the same time, you also have to look at where skills come from. Alliance War skills come from playing PvP. Not everyone plays PvP, so a lot of these skills you might not have access to unless you're willing to sacrifice your playstyle from being a PvEer to play PvP. That's really comes down to that choice. Then you have your guild skills. Now, guild skills come in 4 different categories pretty much, because Dark Brotherhood and Thieves Guild are mostly passive stuff. So you have your Fighters Guild skills, and you get 4 active, 1 ultimate, and you get your passives. And a lot of the passives directly affect your ability to use these skills and how they can affect your play with these skills. Mage's Guild, kind of the same way. The passives pretty much do that, but then there is some that do others, but get my point. A lot of these skills are magic based. Fighters Guild is stamina based. Then you have the Sigic Order, which is a mix. You have physical or magicka and stamina based skills in here. Mostly magicka, because magicka skills are more prevalent than stamina based skills when it comes to anything other than weapons. So you do get a few choices in here. And then you have the Undaunted skill line. This is more group dynamic based skills, because they're all synergies. Now, synergies are really good because synergies allow you to do something that activates a secondary effect. So, like, for example, Blood Altar has the active ability of lifesteal on enemies, which makes it to where every time you deal damage, every second, you get health back, which is really good in some cases. The secondary effect is allies in the area can activate the blood funnel thing or whatever, and synergy, healing for 40% of their max health. So if you activate the synergy, you're going to heal yourself for 40% of your max health. But if you also have the synergy passive, Undaunted Command, you will also gain resources back as well based on your resource pools. So the higher your resource pool, the more you'll get of that one resource. So that's really good. Synergies are also attached to class skills. Some, different skills in different ways, but they're all attached here. Every single one of these is a synergy. So synergies can help your group in a lot of ways. Resource management, all that kind of stuff. And it's one of the reasons why a lot of people overlook the use of these in some group activities, because they don't realize that every single one of these is a synergy and it can play to your group's advantage. So, in different ways. Survivability, taunting, or keeping aggro, resource management, even damage over time, and snaring, and then of course group support. So you have that there. But there's the main focus of skills is that damage control support effect, and how you can take advantage of them in a group scenario, or in a solo scenario, or in a PvP scenario. So when you look at skills, look at their effects. Look at how they can affect the way you play as a solo player, as in a group dynamic way, or even in a PvP way. So you can have skills that you use in different situations, whether it's PvP, PvE, or Dungeons and Trials, in that group dynamic play, or even against world bosses, or whatever you're doing. You have access to these different skills that can support or damage, control, and support the way you play. And that's what skills are truly about, is taking advantage of the tools to give you an advantage in solo play, in group play, or in PvP play. But that's pretty much it. I mean, that's how skills work. I mean, they're not really complicated, other than some of the wording that they use for some of them can confuse people. But other than that, I mean, it's really simple, like use, like cleave. A lot of people are like, oh, well, this is just an AoE. Yeah, it's an AoE in this form, but when you go into the other form, the other morphs, then you get more effect. And that's the other thing you have to remember, is every active skill in the game has the base version, and then it has 2 morphs. And the 2 morphs are going to change its effect to some degree. Like cleave, it says, focus your strength into a mighty swing, dealing X amount of damage to enemies in front of you. Then when you look at the 2 morphs, you have carve, which now applies a bleed, which is physical damage over 10 seconds, extra physical damage over 10 seconds, or you have brawler, which adds a damage shield to you for X amount of damage, which absorbs X amount of damage for 6 seconds, and each enemy hit increases the shield strength by 50% up to 300%, so you can actually get a pretty massive shield depending on the group size you're fighting. If you're just fighting one target, it's not going to be as big, but when you're fighting trash, that's a really big shield that gives you greater survivability. So you got to really look and focus at how you're going to play your character, on what skills and their effect you want them to have. So just remember that. Now when it comes to class skills, some skills might have a magicka morph or a stamina morph. Depending on how you choose to play, if you're more stamina based, then focusing on stamina might be better than using a magicka based skill. But it doesn't mean that you can't make a character that can use both. And those are called hybrid characters. And hybrid characters build into both magicka and stamina. They are not super effective at either one, but they can bring an arsenal with them that nobody else can, because they have access to a larger amount of skills than a stamina character or a magicka character. They can bring both. So they get a lot more tools to their advantage. They're just not like masterful with them as somebody who dedicates themselves. So hybrids are still viable, and they're still an option in the game. I'm just letting you know that here. So you can decide on your own how you choose to play the game. And you got to remember, this game is play how you want. So you get to decide how you want to play your tank, your healer, or your damage dealer. You get to choose what armor type you want to do that in. And don't look at armor passives as a way of saying, well, I can't be a tank in light armor because I don't get as many benefits as I do in heavy armor. The thing you have to remember about passives with armor is this. Light armor definitely gives you an advantage with magicka based stuff. Medium armor gives you an advantage with stamina based stuff, and heavy armor gives you a greater advantage with survivability. So this is going to give you a greater advantage with using magic based damage, support, whatever. This is going to give you a greater advantage using damage, stamina based support or whatever, and this is going to give you a greater advantage at surviving, period, because it's going to give you more health. It's going to give you that greater survivability access without sacrificing stat slots on your character, like sacrificing, say, an armor set that could increase your DPS. You're sacrificing it for something that increases your survivability. Because that's the other thing you have to understand when it comes to playing different roles. Tank, healer, DPS. It's about how you play the character. Like when you play a tank, you build to be survivable with DPS and support added on. When you play a healer, you're playing to be more supportive to your group with lack of DPS and healing, or and control. It doesn't mean that you don't do those things. It just means that your main focus is that stuff. Just like when you play a damage dealer, you focus in dealing damage, but it doesn't mean you can't bring support and damage or control to the group. You're just not designed to focus into it like the other roles are. Like a tank's primary purpose is to focus on control and support, or control and damage, because that's the way they're literally designed, is to do group control and bring that with it. When a healer comes into a group, they're there to bring group support and damage. Just like a tank is meant to bring control and damage dealers are meant to bring damage with some support and control. And just like a tank can bring heals as well, I mean support as well. So it's like you bring a little bit of everything, no matter what, but your focus is one of three things, one of three skill categories. And that's because that's the way the game is designed to be played. And it's the same thing with armor. Like if you play a DPS in heavy armor, you're sacrificing the amount of damage you can focus into for survivability, which gives you, if you have greater survivability, doesn't deter your DPS. It actually gives you more sustainable DPS in a different way. Where medium armor, you get greater burst control DPS than you do sustainable DPS because of the fact that you don't have the survivability as somebody in heavy armor. And the same thing goes for somebody in light armor. That you everything you do in this game, you sacrifice something to make up the difference for something else. So like light armor, you're sacrificing your capability to use stamina and survivability to use magic, to focus on the magic. When you play something in medium armor, you're focusing more into stamina with the sacrifice into magic and survivability. When you play something in heavy armor, you're focusing on survivability more than you are damage and the other stuff. But it doesn't mean that you can't play that way. Because you can play a heavy armor DPS. You can. You're just going to have more survivability and a little less DPS. But it doesn't mean you can't do it. The same thing goes with playing a hybrid. You can do a hybrid in light, medium, or heavy armor and still be good at all three functions. Just you're sacrificing more of one thing for another. It just depends on how you choose to play. And that's pretty much it. I mean, there is a lot of stuff you have to go through to understand how things work, but once you get the basics and you look at how skills can affect the way you play, passives can affect the way you play, and build your character, and how different things like armor, weapons, and then skills on top of that play into your character and how effective they can be, whether it's a magicka-based character in light armor, medium armor, or heavy armor. And yes, you can play a magicka character in medium armor. It's just you're losing focus of how your character works, but it doesn't mean that you can't hybridize and be focused into stamina with magic secondary. Or if you play in a hybrid character in light armor, you can focus in a magicka with stamina being secondary. Or if you play in heavy armor, you can focus a little bit into everything and have that really good survivability. So you see where looking at the different perspectives of the game can play into the way you use skills, and the way those skills can affect your play, both active and passively. But that's pretty much it. I mean, seriously, I couldn't go into any more. I couldn't give it any more detail than that, because then you're breaking stuff down into mathematical formula stuff, and that's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to just show you what tools work and how they work, and understanding that skills have those three categorical effects: damage, control, support, and then your passives have that same thing, and then different ways you build your character has different effects based on the armor type you use, the weapon type you use, and all that all plays into how your character is built and played in the content, whether it's PvE, group, or PvP. And group play isn't just Dungeons and Trials, because you can do group play in Overland against world bosses, public dungeons, delves, that kind of thing if you want to. It's just going to be a lot easier in that content than it would be in a dungeon or trial, where the difficulty scales based on the difficulty at which you play at. Where in Overland it's a set difficulty. But everyone has their preference of play, so that's all that matters. But that's it for the video. Hope this helps, and hope it's something that guides you a little bit better than some other stuff that I've done in the past. And if it does, you guys know what's coming next. Go ahead and hit that like button if you guys like the video. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. And also make sure you hit that notification bell to be notified when I post new videos. And other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day. And this guy might see you in game. Bye.